Jr. catch the vision and join the team.
Hi, this is Pastor Julius Davis of Embrace Hope International at 2956 Owen Drive. You are listening to Wake Up.
Good morning. I'm Apostle Preston Davis Jr., True Love Church International, and I'm proud to be a sponsor of Wake Up Coalition.
Welcome to Cape Fear Valley's Making Rounds Live, broadcasting and streaming live from the WIDU Community Room.
The We Do Radio Network, WAGR in Lumberton, WYDU in Red Springs, WEWO in Laurinburg.
Making Rounds Live on 99.7 FM, 1600 AM.
We air every second and fourth Tuesday of the month.
Making Rounds Live.
The purpose of this show is to bring you information on health and wellness.
Here's the host of Making Rounds Live, Omega Jones.
And thank you so much, Ray. Welcome to another edition of Cape Fear Valley Health's Making Rounds Live. I'm your host, Omega Jones. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, so our guests today are from the Child Advocacy Center. This organization has been coordinating services for child abuse victims and their families in our area since 1993. Now, before we get started with this broadcast, and because of the subject matter that we're going to discuss today, if this is not a time for you to take matters into your own hands, if you or someone that you know is going through what we may discuss today, make sure you contact either one of these folks that we're talking to today. Contact 911 or contact Department of Social Services. Remember, this program today is for informational purposes only. Today we have with us Prevention and Volunteer Coordinator from the Child Advocacy Center, Ms. Faith Bamer, and we have the Executive Director with us today, John Webster. And thank you both for being on the broadcast today. We greatly appreciate your time to come in to talk about a subject that a lot of folks really don't want to talk about, but it's something that we really and truly need to talk about. So, Faith, we're going to start with you this morning. It's great seeing you again, first of all. And John, once again, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. Now, Faith, April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we're seeing all of these blue and silver pinwheels all over the county, all over the city. That's the work that your group does, correct?
Correct.
And what is the importance of the pinwheels, and why are we seeing them right now?
So the blue pinwheels came about probably about 15 years ago, maybe getting close to 16 years ago, as a reminder to us adults, but to everyone, that we want to protect children. We want children to be safe. We want them to be secure. And so the pinwheels represent that bright future that every child deserves. So when we see them out in the community, as I drove here today, I saw some and they were just spinning, and it was just beautiful to see that blue and silver spinning, because that's a reminder to us that we want our children to grow up in a safe, healthy environment. And that's at home, that's at school, that's at church, it's on the playground, it's at piano lessons, it's at dance, wherever they go, we want them to be safe in our community.
So once again, Faith, when people see these pinwheels, the main thing that you want them to think about, the main thing that you want them to know is we're keeping our children safe. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because our children are our future. They're the future citizens of our communities. They're our next doctors, our next lawyers, our next teachers. They're everything for the future, and so we want them to be as healthy as possible so that they can be successful.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we have Prevention and Volunteer Coordinator, Ms. Faith Bamer, with us today, and the Executive Director, Mr. John Webster. They're both from the Child Advocacy Center. Now, Mr. Webster, what is considered abuse and what is not abuse?
Okay, in North Carolina, there are statutes that relate to this. It's in 7B 101 is the chapter and verse, but Basically, a child is defined as anyone under the age of 18 in North Carolina, and it involves a child who sustains serious injury or substantial risk of serious injury, serious emotional damage, or exploitation by a parent or guardian or caretaker. Some examples would include any injury to a child of a non-accidental nature, placing a child at substantial risk of serious physical injury or cruel or grossly inappropriate discipline, sex crimes against a child that's either perpetrated by a caretaker or encouraged a child to participate in sex crimes. Any emotional damage to a child can be defined as, fall under the abuse definition. And of course, human trafficking of a child or sexual servitude of a child, or encouraging delinquent behavior on the part of a child. So it's a wide definition, and I think the state realizes that. But in case law, it can be narrowed down and interpreted for a particular court case.
John, is neglect considered abuse?
In North Carolina, it's not defined the same. There are different definitions. However, before I talk about neglect, I do want to point out that oftentimes neglect can be just as serious, if not more serious, over time for a child, because neglect tends to be more chronic in terms of ongoing issues, whereas abuse will often be defined as a specific incident or something you can really put your finger on. Mm-hmm. Neglect is much more broad, but it can also include things such as, the failure of a parent or guardian to provide just the basics of food, shelter, medical care. If a child has a medical issue that needs attention and the parent or caregiver fails to get them the attention they need, that's a big issue. Malnourishment, abandonment, a continuous truancy from school, kids witnessing violence, domestic violence, that's a huge one in this state and around the country. Drugs, endangerment, poor hygiene, insufficient supervision, leaving children locked up in a home, and a fire breaks out and disaster happens. So again, neglect is like abuse. It's very broad, but there is a distinction between neglect and abuse.
John, there were few things that you mentioned. One thing that you mentioned about neglect, I remember just saw a news article not too long ago. A parent made the news because they had the neglect. They had not. The food had not been provided for the child. They had been locked up. Same situation with the sex trafficking. We hear that on the news all the time. Recently, there was a gentleman who just made the news for child sex crimes, and he is now in Cumberland County Jail locked up. So as people in the community, when we see things like this, when we hear of things like this, is there something that we can do?
Yes, and we are, as citizens of North Carolina, we're all mandated reporters. So we're required to, if we see something, if we either witness it firsthand or if we see it secondhand, we may have the whole story or we may have just part of the story. But if we see that a child's at risk or being abused or neglected, we're obligated by law to report it to the authorities. And that would be social services would be the primary point of contact. Law enforcement is also very much involved in that. Or, Child Advocacy Center would certainly route people to the appropriate places to report it. So, we're obligated and should have this duty and feel this duty to report because, as Faith said, our children are our future and they're also our present, and we want our children to be safe. We want our children to live in a place that they can be loved and have a good, safe environment to live in. That's what we want for all of our children. That's certainly what I wanted for my children as they were growing up, and I feel no differently toward other children in the community.
What would you say to John Q and Sally Q public that may see something and they say, I don't want to get involved?
Well, they can call social services, they can call law enforcement, and they can make an anonymous report. They do not have to give their name. Nothing in the law requires that information. Back when I was working in child welfare, we encourage people to give their name because there may be a need for follow-up. There may be a social worker or a law enforcement may need to follow up and get a little more information. So it's helpful to have all that, but you are not required by law to do it, and you are protected by law. So if you make a report in North Carolina, your name is held in confidence and will not be re-released to anyone other than law enforcement or the social worker that's involved in the case.
Definitely want to talk about that again later in the broadcast in case someone just came in on the tail end
Sure.
of that.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we have in the studio the Prevention and Volunteer Coordinator for the Child Advocacy Center, Ms. Faith Bamer, and we also have the Executive Director with us today, Mr. John Webster. Now, Mr. Webster or Faith, either one of them, because I know I've been talking to John for the past longest, can you share with our listeners and the viewers that are watching by way of video what the Child Advocacy Center's day-to-day mission is, and how do you all support the community?
I can jump in, and
Sure.
Faith can jump in for what I missed. But our mission, our overall mission is to collaborate with community partners to respond to and prevent abuse. So in Cumberland County, what that looks like is about 19 different community partners that we work with. We work with all law enforcement agencies in the county, including those at Fort Bragg. And we also work with social services, mental health, SHRAHEC, which is Southern Regional Area Health. We work with Alliance Health, just a bunch of partners that we work with in the community. And we all just team up to do the same thing. The District Attorney's Office is very supportive, of course, what we do. And we work together to make sure that when abuse is found and discovered, that the proper channels it goes down the proper channels so the proper authorities are involved. And if criminal charges are needed, then we help pursue those. And we want people to be held accountable for mistreating our most vulnerable citizens, which we consider to be our children.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the studio, we have Prevention and Volunteer Coordinator Faith Bamer and Executive Director John Webster from the Child Advocacy Center. We're talking about something that folks really don't want to talk about, but it's something that we need to talk about. And if you have any questions or any comments, what you can do is you can give us a call at WIDU Studios. That number is 910-483-6111. Miss Glenda, she is at the front. Awesome lady. She will take the question and make sure that we get that question answered. And if you're watching us by way of the Cape Fear Valley's live stream, Lindsay is over there working hard. She leave that question in the comments section. She will get that question to us if she can't answer it herself, because she's a wealth of information also. Finally, we want you to share the broadcast. Mainly, this is information that is vital. This is information that is needed and it needs to be known. So instead of trying to be that middle person, that messenger, just share the broadcast, and in that way, the person can get the information firsthand. And once again, in the studio, Faith Bamer and John Webster from the Child Advocacy Center today on Cape Fear Valley Health's Making Rounds Live. Faith, can you tell us more about the Child Advocacy Center, what it offers, and how people can get involved?
Sure. So we have a lot of different things that are happening. I feel like we kind of just move from thing to thing because there's just so many things that we can promote. One of the ways people can get involved is to be a volunteer. They can volunteer in a variety of ways by serving on any of our committees, from planning events like our human trafficking things that we do in January, to April's Child Abuse Summit, to being on the Marketing and Development Committee, to serving on one of the major fundraiser committees. They also can just come in the office and help us get mailings ready. They can help answer the phone at the front door. so just a variety of different things that they can be a part of. Excuse me.
That's okay.
They can also become a part of wanting to learn how to protect children by taking some of our prevention trainings that we offer. We do all of this at no cost to anyone in the community. Of course, they can pay it forward if they choose to. We have a variety of trainings that we offer, from Stewards of Children, which is our child sexual abuse training, which is about 2.5, 3 hours, that gives folks the understanding of knowing how to recognize and to report that abuse. It also helps them to learn the language to use, when to use the language, when to talk to their children, all of those type of things. We also do one that's called Protective Factors. That one is a seven module training, and it helps you to learn the 5 different protective factors in protecting our children. So all of those things are powerful. We also do things around internet safety. June will be coming up, and we'll be looking at offering some things to help bring some awareness about internet safety. Last week we had our Child Abuse Summit that we do annually in April. And one of our breakout sessions was about sextortion. And I learned that day that there are over 600,000 dating apps. That kind of threw me for a minute. But that's a lot.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of ways that we need to educate ourselves, but also help educate those young people, because those are the ones that are on their phones. And we all are on our phones. I don't mean to say that adults aren't either. But, we need to know what we're looking at. We need to know what we're downloading, what we're putting on our phones. If we have children in our home, we need to look at, how do we talk to them about etiquette of using a phone, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. Maybe even having some family rules about how to use the phone, how to use gaming systems. Who do you talk to when you're gaming? Who do you talk to on these apps? Those kind of things.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the middle of an amazing conversation with Ms. Faith Bamer and Mr. John Webster from the Child Advocacy Center. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and this is what we're focusing on today. Now, when we come back, I'm going to ask Faith again about this 600,000 number that I just heard, to make sure I heard this right. Cape Fear Valley Health's Making Rounds Live. Make sure you stay close.
We'll be right back with more of Making Rounds Live.
Cape Fear Valley's Making Rounds Live.
Broadcasting and streaming live from the WIDU Community Room on 99.7 FM, 1600 AM.
The We Do Radio Network.
Pastor George Coney Jr., pastor of House of Prayer, Church of God in Christ, 3322 Big Piney Grove Road, Clinton, North Carolina. You're listening to Wake Up.
2 different bills have been filed in the North Carolina House and Senate seeking to hold polluters accountable. Attorney General Pam Bondi outside the White House today addressed reporter questions, but what the Trump administration has acknowledged was the accidental deportation of legal U.S. resident Kilmore Obega Garcia. North Carolina Supreme Court temporarily halted enforcement on Monday of an appeals court decision on Friday in favor of the Republican candidate in a close and unresolved North Carolina election for a seat on the state's highest court. Instagram has announced a new rule that would keep children under the age of 16 from live streaming or unblurring nudity in messages they have received on Meta. A new building is coming to the North Carolina State Fairgrounds. It's a new food hall. Mike Rayleigh, NCI News.
I'm Jamie Monticelli, WIDU Radio News. Yesterday's Cumberland County Board of Commissioners meeting will resume today at 11 a.m. The chats with the chairman press conference will follow immediately after. Governor Josh Stein has announced his advisory council on student safety and well-being. It'll be co-chaired by Senate Democratic leader Sidney Batch, Deputy Secretary William Billy Lassiter of the Department of Public Safety, and 2024 North Carolina Teacher of the Year Heather Smith. Governor Stein's advisory council will work across state agencies and with both state and local leaders to propose and implement policies and solutions that'll improve student safety and well-being. It'll advance recommendations, provide guidance to state agencies, work with local communities, and share best practices. The council's first priority will be working with the General Assembly to support school systems and implementing policies that'll make classrooms cell phone free. The governor made the announcement at Moore Square Magnet Middle School. From WIDU Radio, I'm Jamie Monticelli.
Much calmer weather today, starting out cooler with temperatures in the upper 40s to near 50 degrees. We're becoming sunny today, high temperatures reaching into the middle 60s. Overnight, mainly clear. There could be some patches of frost as temperatures drop into the mid to upper 30s. High pressure overhead is going to keep things bright as we head into Wednesday. High temperatures in the low 60s, overnight lows in the low to mid 40s. For the North Carolina News Network, I'm meteorologist Chris Michaels in the Weather Center.
I'm Matthew Ross Jr., the founding pastor servant leader of the House of Emmanuel Church, 3790 South Main Street, Hope Mills, North Carolina, encouraging each and every one to catch the vision and join the team. The WIDU team that is making great strides and advances in the community, and we encourage each and every one to join together as we make kingdom disciples together, as we catch the vision, join the team.
You know a thing or two about the moments in life that matter. You've seized those moments to embrace joy, accomplish great things, and build meaningful relationships. Is it time now to sit back and reflect on a life well lived? Maybe. Or maybe there's more to be done. Maybe this is the most important moment you've encountered yet. By volunteering with AmeriCorps Seniors, you can seize the moment, lend a hand, and get back more than you give. We connect you to local volunteer organizations with opportunities that fit your schedule and match your interests. Through AmeriCorps Seniors, you can support people in times of need and make your community stronger. You can become a companion to your older neighbors, brightening their days with friendship. You can even become a mentor for young people, serving as a role model and enriching their lives. Are you ready to seize your moment? Visit AmeriCorps.gov/yourmoment and get started today.
Have you considered a career in public power? Public power offers you real opportunities for career growth, from scholarships and community college partnerships to training and apprenticeship programs. You're part of a team that builds and maintains a locally owned and operated electric system. Work close to home, grow your career, and support your local community by providing safe, reliable, and sustainable electricity. Join Public Power and make a difference in your community. Learn more about careers in public power at electricities.com.
Attention Fayetteville. The 2025 Hondas are here at Bryan Honda, your #1 destination for unbeatable deals. The all-new 2025 Honda Pilots, Accord, Civics, and CR-Vs are arriving daily. Whether you're looking for style, performance, or unbeatable reliability, Bryan Honda has the perfect ride for you. Need financing? No problem. Our hassle-free financing makes it easier than ever to drive home in a brand new Honda today. And when it's time for service, our trusted team keeps your Honda running like new. Stop by Bryan Honda, 4104 Rayford Road in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Or visit us online at BryanHonda.com. Nobody beats a Bryan Honda deal. Not now, not ever.
Hi, this is Pastor Julius Davis of Embrace Hope International at 2956 Owen Drive. You are listening to Wake Up.
This is Bishop Steve McMillan of the New Life Covenant Fellowship. We're proud partners of the Wake Up Call.
We now return to Making Rounds Live.
Cape Fear Valley's Making Rounds Live.
Broadcasting and streaming live on the WIDU network, 99.7 FM, 1600 AM. Here's Omega Jones.
Thank you so much, Ray. Welcome back to the second segment of Cape Fear Valley Health's Making Rounds Live. We are in the middle of an amazing conversation, and during the break, we got into a very deep conversation. But right now, we are talking about child child abuse prevention, because April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And before we went into break, we were talking about internet safety. And one of the things that a word that was mentioned that I had never heard before was sextortion. Faith, John, explain to parents what this subject is. How do we protect our children and our grandchildren from becoming victims of this?
Well, I think it is a phrase. Sextortion is a scary sounding term, and it is a scary thing because, and it's something that those of us who have grown children maybe didn't face. We didn't have to worry about this with our children, but parents today have a lot to worry about. And if your kid is playing around on TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram, whatever they may be involved in, or gaming devices, they're interacting with people who they think they know, they think they can trust them, and these people are very good, these traffickers, and are very good at getting their trust. And it's very sad, to think that our children even have to worry about this, but they do, and as their parents, we have an obligation to do our best to keep them safe. But basically, sextortion, there's a lot of different variations of it. But basically what happens is children or teens get on these websites, get on these different social media platforms, and they just chat and talk and go back and forth, and they begin to open up to this person who they think is maybe another 14-year-old, and maybe just somebody who's their colleague or same age person. In reality, this person may be a very dark-sided person with very dark motives. And what they do is they gain the child's trust. They may convince the child to post a picture. The first one may just be a normal picture, and then they may ask them to remove some clothing, or just, you're a pretty girl, or, that you might be a model one day, and so they kind of build them up. They talk them into posting something that's not appropriate. And then once that's in that trafficker's hand, and in their computer, then they can use it. They can either sell it on the deep dark web, or they can, even come back to the child and say, if you don't give me $250, I'm going to send this to your school principal. I'm going to send this to your parent. I know where they are. I know where they are. I know where they live. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to ruin your life. And for a child, they hear that, and they do whatever they can to get hands on that money. Some kids have money with that. They've been working a job, and they may able to give this money out or go get gift cards or whatever the person wants, and they give that out. And so then they'll say, give me some more, give me more money. And then if it doesn't happen, then they can release this information. And, if a child thinks that their life is going to be ruined if this picture is released, we know that there's ways to, recover from that. And that's an important message. But for a teenager, sometimes, the world is just 2 minutes from now. They're not thinking down the road. And as a result, they can do such dreadful things as suicide, or because they can't see a way out. So it's just so important that these children and their parents are watching what they're doing online. And I had to admit, as a parent, I didn't do a really good job of that, because at the time I just wasn't aware, and I don't think some of this was going on, 10 years ago. But if I were a parent of a young child now, I think I would be much more diligent in watching what platforms they're on, because you never can say for sure who you're chatting with, even though you may think that person is very safe. And most of the times they probably are. But if you get a hold of a person that's got a bad motive, they can do a lot of damage to an innocent child.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the studio, Prevention and Volunteer Coordinator Faith Bamer and Executive Director John Webster. They're both from the Child Advocacy Center as we talk about child abuse prevention during Child Abuse Prevention Month. Now, one thing that we were talking about in between the break was the conversation about child abuse now versus, I guess, back when we were coming up. Can you tell us what has changed over the past few decades?
Well, I think one of the big things is there's access to so much. You know, we have the world at our fingertips with a device, with a phone, with gaming. It's just so easy to connect to a world that, like when I was a kid, my world was my street or my school or my church or what have you. But I didn't have those opportunities to expand like we do today. And all of that's not a negative. It can be very positive, but there's also the fact that we need to be aware there is negative, just like John was saying, you know, with the sextortion, there's things that are hidden and we have to be cautious and we have to go into that with caution. I think there's so many things that we need to teach our kids. One of the things that we're doing in a couple of weeks with our Head Start here in the community is doing body safety classes, where we're going to go in with a lesson plan that talks about knowing what's up, what are some red flags, and helping the children to have some verbal language to know what to say if they feel uncomfortable. You know, we're not going into body parts and body terms, nothing like that, but we're going to be working with the 4-year-old classes and helping them to get some of that language so that when they're with their parent or they're with their Sunday school teacher or they're with their their T-ball coach or whatever, and they're not comfortable or something's happening, they can begin to have a conversation. And then if something is inappropriate going on, then us as adults hopefully know what those signs are, which then leads me to say how important it is for an adult to know what to do. So when we're providing this information, this prevention, education, and awareness, our first step is to train adults, to help adults to know what are the things we need to look for? What are the signs of abuse? What do I need to do to make my environment at my child care center or at my church or when I'm out on the playground or when we're out at the football field? What do I need to do to make it safe? So they need to be educated. But then at the same time, we want to educate those young children because unfortunately, sometimes those children are in the home with the perpetrator. And they need to have that language to tell other people, other trusted adults, which is what we talk to the kids about, having those trusted adults that they can talk to.
Another question. What kind of role do you want people to play in preventing child abuse? Is it more about recognizing? Is it more about reporting it? Or is it more about sitting down and having those uncomfortable conversations?
Well, I think we want all of that, and it's those are difficult conversations for us to have because this is just not a good topic. This is not a feel-good topic, but it is a necessary one. And basically, we want people to learn to be their voice. That's a tagline that we use a lot at the CAC, and it's on a lot of our materials. Is be their voice. We want people to be aware. Be aware of what's going on in the community. Just learn more. So we've talked a lot about bad things about social media, but there's also a lot of good things that can come from social media, and we're using that on our Facebook page and on Instagram and different ways that we promote what we're doing. And so there's a lot of good things you can do with it. You just got to be careful on how social media is used. And so we can send out awareness. We can send out items that, educate people, and they can go on our website, which is www.cacfaync.org. They can go on that website, get a lot of information there about how they can become involved. and also just awareness about what's going on. But we want parents to be, sensitive to what's going on, check in with your children, be aware of what they're logging into. I mean, a lot of times parents are paying the bills, so they do have a right to know what their kids are involved in. So we want that, and we want people to come and support events, in the community, not just with the CAC, but there's a lot of good child welfare organizations in this community. DSS is very active in the county. Partnership for Children. There's all sorts of places that they can become involved, and we just want people to do that so that we can work together to be passionate about protecting our children, because that's ultimately what we want. We want kids to not to have to go through abuse. I've worked in child welfare for 30 plus years prior to coming to this position, and it was a very reactive role. I mean, we reacted to abuse that had already occurred, and that's when you're putting the pieces back together. Those are broken children, and there's a lot of good success stories that come from that, but there's also children who never recover fully from that abuse. And so we want people to find ways to prevent it in the first place. If we can prevent it, then those children can live just that. They can live in a happy, loving home, and get off to a really good start in life. That's what we want.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Prevention and Volunteer Coordinator Faith Bamer and Executive Director John Webster from the Child Advocacy Center. They're our guests today on Making Rounds Live. Faith, one thing that I forgot to ask, the event that you guys have coming up. Give us the details on that.
Yes, I'd be glad to. So we are heading into our spring fundraiser, which is called the Fayetteville Ultimate Lip Sync Showdown. And it's going to be May 17th. We have two shows, actually, a matinee at 1 p.m., which will be featuring more of your young people, your youth acts. And then in the evening at 7 p.m., we have our final show, which will be your adult acts. But we are still looking for acts, so if you have a group that would like to be a part of being an act, we would love to have you do that with us, and you can find that information, the form to fill out, on our website. We are just about to send out the invitation, which means the tickets will go live too. So we will be looking for people to buy tickets. We have, we always have a great time at this. We have, photo booth that we're going to have. It's a 360. Those are pretty popular right now, so we actually have that coming as well. And so it's just a great time with lots of people doing some fun acts, and you get, if you're in the audience, you're sitting there singing along with the act that's happening. So it's pretty fun. But it is probably one of the best secrets maybe in the community, where people may not have been and they're not sure or something, but it's a great event for people to come to, and we'd love to have you be there. But you can find all that information on our website, and again, that address is www.cacfayync.org, or you can call in at 910-486-9700.
Let's talk about what people can do right now if they suspect a child has been abused. Now, John, earlier you mentioned something called mandatory reporters. Could you explain what that is again, in case someone is just tuning in and they missed what you said earlier?
Okay, so yes, in North Carolina there are mandatory reporting laws, so that means that each and every one of us have a responsibility and obligation to report abuse or neglect if we are aware of it. If we see it, if we become aware of it secondhand, we need to report it. We're mandated to report that, and we don't have to have all the information to report. You may say, well, I don't know the father's name, or I don't know the mother's name. If you know any of the information, if you know who the child is, where the child lives, where they go to school, any of that is helpful to get this reported. And so we would encourage people to do that. The best way to do that is to pick up the phone and call the Cumberland County Department of Social Services and ask to speak to a CPS intake worker, and they will route you to the right person and there will be a series of questions that they will ask, and it's a very guided process, and it's painless. You can make these reports by giving your name. You can also make these reports anonymously if you feel more comfortable doing that. So the important thing here is that this is everybody. This includes clergy, attorneys, doctors, teachers, child care providers. All of us are mandated reporters, so no one's excused from reporting abuse when we see it. And that's just the main message that we want to get out there related to that.
And finally, as we get ready to wrap up this broadcast, what would you want parents to remember about child abuse prevention, about Child Abuse Prevention Month, or anything that could help them? And Faith, I'll start with you.
Okay. I think probably the biggest thing is that goes back to conversations. For the adults, for the parents, for the caregivers, the foster parents, to have those conversations. And sometimes they can be hard, but if you start out with them at a young age and you share with them the basic information they need at their age, and then you continue to teach them the things, and you may add to that the older they get, what's more appropriate at that age, etc. So you just keep doing that. But for those parents to know that many times this can be prevented if we take the steps to have that awareness, that education to our children, and talk about the body parts, call them the real name so the children know, and then when and if they feel uncomfortable, they can have that conversation, have the appropriate words to say.
All right. And John?
I would agree with all of that, and I would just add, that if you're a parent or if you're a teacher or a child care provider and you notice changes in the child, that's maybe they're withdrawing, or maybe their personality's changing, or maybe they're hoarding food, or just things like that. It may not necessarily mean they're being abused or neglected, but it may be something that needs to be looked into a little bit more to see what's causing that. And, I think we owe it to our children to get involved and not turn our head to that when we see it, because it is out there. It doesn't matter, regardless of your socioeconomic status, your race, your background. It crosses all boundaries, and I have seen it. I've worked in several different counties, and it doesn't matter what county you're in, the problem's the same, and it all needs our attention, and we all have obligation to do what we can to prevent it.
And I have to say this, for those folks that I don't want to get involved, what do you have to say to them?
You need to get involved, because this impacts your community. This impacts the place you live. This impacts the children that you love, the children that are going to grow up and become your leaders. They're going to be running this county one day in various capacities, and don't we want those kids to be healthy? Don't we want them to be happy and well-adjusted? And that's what we all want, I think. So if we want that, then that's going to require some action on our part, on each of us. We all have that obligation.
All right. And Faith, one more time, where can they find the information about the event?
At our website, www.cacfayNC.org, or by phone at 910-486-9700.
Ladies and gentlemen, Prevention and Volunteer Coordinator Ms. Faith Bamer and Executive Director John Webster from the Child Advocacy Center. They were our guests today on Cape Fear Valley Health's Making Rounds Live. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today to talk about this difficult subject. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. Enjoy being here.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next broadcast is Tuesday, April 22nd, and we'll talk about the Blood Donor Center's Save Our Summer program, so make sure you join us for that. For our producers, Shaka Jordan, Ray Thomas, and Lindsey Graham, the amazing team behind the scene, I'm Omega Jones, continuing the legacy of Darvin Jones. Thank you so much for watching and listening to Cape Fear Valley Health's Making Rounds Live.
Your station for inspiration and information. 1600 AM, 99.7 FM.